All in Sports Network. We love sports.
A lame duck day for a lame duck tournament. And today, as we recap the Elite Eight, and we have now solidified the Final Four. And it looks like with about a minute 50 remaining, Auburn up by 9. Looks like they're in full control of the outcome of this game. And they look like they're going to be in full control as they were the entire game today. The Houston-Tennessee game wasn't much better. In fact, it was probably worse. And just not a great day of college basketball. On the women's side, there was an exciting 1-2 matchup between South Carolina and Duke, where South Carolina made a fourth quarter comeback, won that game, won by 4. UCLA advancing to their first ever Final Four. And then for tomorrow's games, you will have Texas and TCU taking on one another, and then USC and UConn. I believe UConn will run away with that one fairly easily. Texas TCU ought to be a really good game, ought to be a dogfight. Looking forward to watching that one tomorrow. But this is your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on All in Horns. Not a lot of Longhorn news to go over. However, softball did win their series over Mississippi State. And they won today. What was it, Jake? 7-2? Is that what you said?
Yeah, 7-2.
7-2. So get that series under their belt, and they win the series 2-1. They were split going into today. And so, that's kind of the update on Texas news, if you will. Again, women's hoops will play their Elite Eight game against TCU, trying to get to the Final Four this year. So with all that being said, it looks like the men's is about to be final, and the Final Four on the men's side, Auburn and Florida will take on one another, and then it will be Duke and Houston moving on as well into the Final Four. So first game of today was Houston and Tennessee, Jake. Kind of a blowout, not a whole lot to talk about. It was over within the first 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah, just a complete no-show from Tennessee. They had 8 points with like 8 minutes left in the first half, something like that.
Yeah.
A complete no-show offensively. Just effort-wise, Houston was beating them. And kind of just a head-scratcher for how Tennessee played. They felt like they were getting a little momentum here and there in the second half, and then Houston would just hit a big shot. And that's why, you just can't get yourself in these big holes against, a Houston, against an Auburn, because kind of same thing. Yep. I made the deadly mistake of texting you that I thought, the second game, we'll get to that when we get there. But I'm just annoyed with.
Take away from the entire tournament, Jake. Let's get into it. These games weren't great games. So, like, for us to sit and talk about them, like, they were interesting to sit and watch is going to be lying to the audience. Like, everyone who knows is going to think the same thing of, like, these games weren't great games to watch on a Sunday. Like, I literally turned on the Houston Open and was watching Minwoo Lee win his first PGA major, or win his first PGA tournament over watching either one of these two games.
Yeah, you told me to flip it over to that, and I'd already been flipping to it, but it looked he was ahead by like 4 or 5 shots when I checked it. Then I just watched that until that was over the basketball game, and that's not something I should be doing in March, and especially when we don't get the upsets early and the crazy games early.
Yeah.
For these games not to materialize is really the sour note for me. I can handle there not being a bunch of upsets in the first round, but then you're having all these 1 and 2 seeds go against each other, and all these games just flopped. Texas Tech Florida was a really good game. Mm-hmm. We got 1, but I just don't feel satisfied from a March Madness standpoint with the tournament.
Sweet 16 was kind of lame duck. So there was a couple good games out of the Sweet 16.
I think it's just because of how much madness we got in the last couple years that we used up all the madness, and then there had to be just one kind of clunker of a tournament, or at least clunker. I would say clunker so far at this point.
We don't have a whole lot of time to make up for it. Now, if we talked about it off air before we hit the record button, if both Final Four games, buzzer beater, overtime type games that are just all-time classics, and then your national championship is one to remember for a lifetime. And it just comes down to, just the last 3 games of the season being played next weekend as just all-time greats back to back to back, then yeah, maybe people remember that. And it goes back to our whole conversation. It seems like this whole week, maybe the tournament is going to be lame all the way up until about 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And then the final great ending makes it a memorable tournament as a whole. But I'm with you, Jake. I was trying so hard to give it the benefit of the doubt. Every time we'd come on, like, well, maybe we get some buzzer beaters. I was like, well, you're going to get these better teams playing in the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. And so, yeah, we have a great opportunity to have some really, really fun games down the stretch. Just never happened. It never happened. Florida, Texas Tech was fun. Houston, Purdue was fun. But yeah, just some of these games this weekend, the vast majority of them just didn't hit the way they were supposed to hit.
Yeah. And these games have just been one team not showing up. Tennessee was a no-show for the first 20, 25 minutes of the game. Michigan State, once they got up 8-6, I think they just thought they won the game and gave up a 17-0 run. And that was the game. And
it really felt like the first 2 minutes of the Michigan State Auburn game, when they were kind of trading buckets, it was like, ooh, this might have a little bit of fun to it. This might just be
in the
this type of
crowd.
game. And like you said, the environment was great, but it really laid a stinker. I mean, under a minute now, Michigan State has gotten it within 8, and I think that's about the closest they've gotten it since they gave up that 17-0 run early in the first half.
Yeah, I think they got it to 8 maybe once or twice before, but they've never been able to. There's not a good. One big takeaway from this tournament is you got to have 3-point shooters. It's not the NBA where you only got to shoot threes, but if you are just incapable of making threes, you're probably not going to go to the Final Four.
Yeah.
And your chances of making the Elite Eight are really just dependent on how good of a defensive team you are and rebounding team. But Michigan State's inability to shoot the threes killed them. St. John, the two teams that I kind of took a flyer on in this tournament, just because even though they are 2 seeds, it's still, not many people were picking St. John's to go to the Final Four beyond. Not many people are taking Michigan State to go to the Final Four beyond. It was their inability to shoot that hurt them. And turns out shooting's important in basketball. I'll make note of that for myself next year in the tournament.
There's a slight aspect to being able to shoot the ball that helps you win games. But no, Jay, I do think there are, in college basketball, you've got to have 3 things. You got to have great coaching, first of all. You've got to be able to have some size that you can out-rebound and make life difficult defensively for your opponent inside the paint. You have to have those 2 things. And then, the ability to shoot the ball can elevate your team to a new level over other teams. Now, if you solely rely on that, and you have one without the other, say in Alabama, and you've got the shooting without the defense and the size, then it's probably not going to end well for you. But some teams are able to find this perfect balance of all 3 of those: Duke, Florida, and some of these other teams, especially this year, Houston, that are able to put it all 3 together and really have that intense defense, the ability to out-rebound you, and then score from the outside. Again, not at an NBA level, not at that consistency, not at that frequency, but still the ability to do it is vitally important to have success in the March Madness tournament.
Yeah, and that's why, there were statistics going into this tournament that these were the strongest 1 seeds in about 25 years.
And there's only been 1 tournament, 2 tournaments with all 4 Final Four teams being a 1 seed.
Yeah, it does not happen often on the men's side at all. But statistically, that's what a lot of people were expecting, just because when you looked at all the advanced analytics, these 1 seeds were the strongest set of 1 seeds that the tournament had seen, and I think it was 25 years. And it has shown why. Because even when they've maybe looked shaky at times, they always come up clutch. Or when it's time to turn it on against a better team, they turn it on. And Auburn's a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
After the first game, people were like, I don't know. And I kind of joked after that first game. I was like, well, this is where everyone will pick Creighton to win, and then Auburn just turns it on and kills them. And they didn't in the first half, but then in the second half, then they're like, okay, we need to win this game. They put them away. And then they did the same thing against Michigan. And then this game, they're like, let's not make this stressful. Let's just put this away early. And when you get a 17-0 run in a game, you're going to win. I mean, unless you're the underdog and then you're just trying to hold on. But when you're trying to come back from 17 down against the number 1 seed in the tournament, and you're not a good 3-point shooting team,
it's tough.
Yeah, it's tough because you got to get a long run of twos. And it felt like every time Michigan State did get it to 10 or they got it to less, then Auburn would hit a 3. And that was the big difference in the game. It looks like this is about to go final. There's 4 seconds left now. 6-point game for Auburn. So, yeah, neither of us, ironically, are going to be able to watch the Final Four live coming up because we'll be on that camping trip, as we've mentioned, where we're out of cell service and everything. And so I'm ready for 2 buzzer beaters. I'm ready for incredible games, best Final Four ever. And then the national championship will suck because we'll get to watch that
when we get back from our vacation, from the camping trip, and get to actually watch the game. Yeah, I 100% am already expecting that to happen. Again, not a lot to talk about, Jake. Final Four. What's your thoughts? Auburn, Florida, and then Duke, Houston. We can kind of give a quick preview and quick rundown of how we think those games are going to go, and then just wrap this thing up.
Which there is some other Texas news I'll bring up before we jump off as well. But Auburn, Florida is going to be interesting because it really relies on Broom's health to me. He came back in this game, I know, but if he had an ankle or an elbow, sometimes those things you don't realize how bad they are until all the adrenaline comes down.
Yeah.
And then swelling happens, and then it gets a lot worse. So I'll be curious to see, is Broom healthy? Is he playing? And what percentage is he playing at? If he's playing and he's healthy, I think Auburn is going. I think Auburn has been the best team in the country all year. Even when they look shaky, it's just more of a they should have won by more shaky, and not a they dropped a really stupid game shaky. So I think Auburn is going to beat Florida. And Duke Houston for me is so difficult. I really want to pick Houston to win. I think Houston can give Duke problems just with they're the most intense team to play against in the country to me. The speed they play at, the physicality they play with, and they are a good shooting team. This is a much better shooting Houston team than some previous teams, but Duke's just been such a wagon. That it's going to take Houston, much like we talked about Tech needing to play their best possible game to have a chance against Florida, and they did, and then they still lost. Houston's going to have to play their best game to have a chance against Duke, and because of that, I'm going to pick Duke to win. Duke to me is on a collision course right now for the national title. And probably going against Auburn, in my opinion, which I think would be the 2 best teams in the country right now.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, at the end of the day, you do want your 2 best teams competing for a national championship. In that scenario, Jake, I don't know. Look, I'm riding with Florida. It should be no surprise to anybody that I'm riding with Florida. I've got 3 of my Final Four. I had a perfect Elite 8, and I've got 3 of my Final Four sitting there. I had Michigan State beating Auburn today. And so Florida beat Auburn in the regular season. That doesn't mean a whole lot. I'm not putting a whole lot of stock into that, but Florida did come out on top, just for anybody who was curious about that. I'm riding with Florida. Again, I think Florida comes in as a more consistent team. Now, Auburn at Auburn's best, I think, is possibly better than Florida. At any given day. However, I think Florida plays a more consistent brand of basketball, whereas Auburn has a tendency to fall asleep at the wheel for stretches of a game. Not so much against Michigan State, but they do have the tendency to do so. Now, if they play their best game, it's going to be really tough for Florida to win this game. Now, I think Florida was maybe a little caught off guard. I thought that they maybe had the same feeling that we had going into that Texas Tech game. Of that they could just run them out of the gym, and that did not happen. And they had to wait until about 2 minutes remaining left in the game to actually start turning it on. For the Duke-Houston game, Houston's a tough matchup because they could outmuscle and play a more physical brand of basketball that throws Duke off a little bit. And that might favor Houston in terms of just the intensity and the passion that they play with. Could fluster Duke a little bit. With that said, Duke in every other aspect, I think, is a better basketball team, and they've got more talent. And so with that being said, I'll go Duke, Florida. I'll stick with my bracket. I have no reason to change my opinion otherwise going into that national championship game. And, in that national championship game, I have Florida winning. But like you said, it seems like Duke is almost that team of destiny. Like they look like far and away the best team of the entire tournament right now.
Yeah, I do think it's funny you say Auburn looks less consistent than Florida. When Florida's has much closer games than Auburn in the tournament.
Yeah,
I mean,
would say
all of
that
Auburn's games have ended in essentially
I'm
blowouts.
talking more so full body of work of the regular season, and there are moments when I watch Auburn, it just looks like they don't fully have it together. But yeah, I would say in terms of the tournament, I would say that Florida has had a tougher road to get to where they are compared to Auburn.
Yeah, I mean that's because Auburn was the number 1 overall seed from their regular season.
So they had the quote unquote easier bracket.
But Florida did beat Auburn in the regular season at Auburn. So there is that. And matchup wise, it's an interesting matchup.
I think they both match up pretty well against each other, but like you said, there's an interesting aspect where Florida seems to be more reliant on the guard play. Auburn seems to be more reliant in the post play. Who comes out on top when it comes to that style will be interesting.
To me, that means this game's going to be a blowout. And I'm actually being honest when I say that. I don't know who's going to win. I'm not necessarily, I mean, I picked Auburn, but I do think it's like I'm at like 51% Auburn, 49% Florida, but I'm at about a 90% chance of it being a blowout because by blowout, I mean 9+ points where it's controlled. It could be just like Auburn, Michigan State was to me because that was a blowout in my opinion because the game never felt close. And it never felt like Auburn didn't have control of the game. Just when matchups like that happen, typically what happens is the team that relies on guard play more either is on fire or shoots terrible. That's how it's been this whole tournament. And if Florida doesn't shoot well, they're going to get blown out by Auburn. Auburn has probably a little bit more room for error, I think, with their style of play. And so that's why I'm picking them. But Florida could come out, shoot extremely well and just win off of 3-point shooting, off of their guard play. Obviously, they still have very capable bigs, but
of course,
I do think this game has very high potential to be a blowout. I actually think Houston Duke will probably end up being the closer game, but you still have that potential there for Duke to just do what they've done all tournament, shoot 60%. But they haven't played a defense like Houston yet either.
True. Also true. Yeah. All right, Jake, Texas Longhorn news that you want to mention. Go ahead.
They did get a commit on the football side. Nicholas Robertson, 4-star. Big boy. 4-star offensive lineman. I haven't done a bunch of digging on him. I know this is kind of on the cycle, with offensive line. Last cycle, they weren't really trying to get a high-level offensive line class. They were more so trying to get some developmental guys, which they did get because those developmental guys are important to get. You look at Trevor Gooseby. Right. But this is the class I know where they're trying to get those big blue chip, ready to go year one type guys. And this is a good start. And I mean, when Texas sets out to do something in recruiting under Sarkisian, under Kyle Flood, they do it.
They typically get it done.
Yeah. I would expect that to be the case and this to be a big offensive line class for Texas. And hopefully we'll start to see some basketball portal news start to come in. I know Sean Miller has started.
You see, Indiana has a whole new roster. They have to rebuild. They have 5 players in the transfer portal, 5 players graduating.
That's just
or 6, it was 6 and 6 or 5 and 5. I don't know. The full roster.
Their new coach. They're bringing in a new coach, correct? I'm pretty sure.
I'm not sure. I don't think. Maybe I don't know. I thought it was the same coach from a season ago.
I thought they got rid of.
One thing that I did see that I didn't know happened was the Bryant, the 15 seed that looked really good against Michigan State. VCU hired their head coach to be their new guy.
Yeah, it is a new coach for Indiana.
Okay.
Darian DeVries. I might be butchering his last name, but yeah, he is a new coach there. So, there is the chance. I believe he was at West Virginia before. Bringing him in, I mean, he could get some of those guys to come out of the portal, but still, that's a rough way to go in, because even for Sean Miller, I think Chindle Weaver's staying. I think that's he's been on Instagram posting on Jordan Pope's account going, let's run it back. And so I know it sounds like Chindle Weaver might be staying, which would be big.
Also, in terms of Texas basketball, Xavier guard Ryan Conwell led the team in scoring with about 17 points per game, I believe, has entered the transfer portal. So a name that you will want to become familiar with in terms of this next portal period for basketball is Ryan Conwell from Xavier. He might follow his former head coach, Sean Miller, to Texas. So just something to kind of keep an eye on.
Yeah, I can actually list a few players that Texas have contacted or leading with. Ryan Conwell, they're supposedly leading with him over Indiana. He's visiting this week. Dalen Swain, another wing from Xavier. Texas supposedly leads over Ohio State. He's visiting this week. They've also contacted Bryce Lindsey, a guard out of James Madison. Magoon Gwath from San Diego State. Nick Davidson, a power forward from Nevada. Check out his tape. I would love for him to come. He's a 6'8" power forward that can stretch the court. He can shoot threes. He can get in the paint. I think he averaged around 17, 18 points. He'd fit in with that Sean Miller style offense very well. And then Markel Sutton from Omaha, who I actually remember watching in this tournament this year with Omaha. And he was a big, lengthy guy, 6'7", 205. And so Sean Miller already busy at it in the portal, trying to get that roster ready for next year.
Yep.
And I'm just going to be excited to watch his.
Devin Pryor's still the only one that I know of that has entered the portal.
Yeah, to my knowledge. I mean, obviously Trey Johnson will announce soon that he's going pro. We all expect that, but
guys graduating and stuff. So
yeah, they lose him. They're losing most of the team. Jordan Pope will be one to watch. Is he going to return? Is he just going to try to go pro? Is he going to try to go somewhere else? I think Sean Miller can make a pretty good case to Jordan Pope to stay, because I think Jordan Pope fits in Sean Miller's system so much better than he did in Rodney Terry's system.
Yeah.
I think Jordan Pope's the exact type of fit that works in Sean Miller's system. And I'm really excited to see just a new style of basketball for Texas this next year. And the names they're targeting seem to be the right fits. Sean Miller knows what he wants for a team. He knows what he wants to run.
It feels like the last 3 tenures have been so defensive minded that we haven't seen a great offensive system. Chris Beard's system is predicated defense first. Let that turn into offense. Rodney Terry kind of came from that tree. I mean, he's been around the Texas, but he's more so ISO offense and play a defensive system. Shaka Smart, I don't know. Is he defense, offense?
Defense. I would say defense.
I would say more of a defensive minded guy in terms of the intensity and full court press that he brings and stuff like that. So, like you said, it's going to be a breath of fresh air to see Sean Miller and an offensive minded, 100% offensive minded coach really implement his style into what Texas does. And so I'm really looking forward to what he does. But yeah, that'll be, something that we're going to keep an eye on, are some of the transfers and the rebuilding of this Texas basketball program. Again, now that March Madness is just about wrapping up, next week will be the final week. It's going to be full baseball, full softball for the remainder of the season. So stick with us. Jake, in terms of the schedule, I think Jake and I discussed it. We're probably just going to take the week off, to be completely honest. We're kind of burnt out, not burnt out, but we're exhausted. We're tired, and we're ready for this vacation to hit. So we'll probably take this full week off. The next you'll probably hear from us is next Sunday following the national championship game. Monday. Yeah. Next Monday, we'll discuss the national championship game. We'll talk about the Final Four, talk about the national championship game. And then we'll go pretty much from that point on, straight up baseball. and our schedule will probably look. What did we discuss in terms of our schedule, Jake? Did we discuss allowing just a Monday through Friday, and then that
I
Monday
think
we talk
and if anyone has an opinion of what they think would work best, leave it in the comments. But I think Monday through Friday would make sense, just because Friday kind of preview the series, and then Monday react to it, and then we'll have a Tuesday game as well to cover, so we get to cover that, and then obviously softball is going as well, and then middle of the week we can discuss any transfer portal news. We'll be getting some more news on spring practices soon. That'll be padded. That's when all the really good information starts to come in. So I don't think there'll be a lack of things to talk about. And for some big series, maybe we do some live reactions down the stretch as we get to the final stretch of the season. Start to react live to some of those games, and then obviously we'll figure it out come postseason time, I think.
Be sure to stay in touch with the Dallas Stars. They're playing good hockey right now, clinched a playoff spot. Not to say that they were ever in danger of not making the playoffs, but
still nice to see that little X by their name.
The X by the name, for sure. So, but hey, if you're not a hockey fan, join us on the ride of our hockey fandom, because we have a great time watching it, and so you're definitely going to want to stay tuned for it. But anyway, all right, Jake, without anything else, we'll go ahead and sign off for today. We'll sign off for next week, and we'll see you following the national championship game between whoever it is, whether that be Duke and Houston or Auburn and Florida. And we'll get ready to go right after that, swinging for the fences with baseball and softball. For Jake Jimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson. You've been listening to your daily fix of all things Texas Longhorns right here on All In Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.